New cat owners get the 3-second feline trust rule wrong every single time, and that single mistake can quietly unravel weeks of bonding progress before you even realize what happened. By the end of this video, you will understand the neurobiological window your cat uses to decide whether you are safe or dangerous, and you will walk away with a specific behavioral test to try with your cat today. Here is what almost no one tells you when you bring a cat home. You invited a small apex predator into your space and asked it to decide, entirely on its own biological timeline, whether you belong in its territory at all. That decision runs through a chemical process most owners never knew existed. Stay with me, because once you understand how this actually works, you cannot unsee it. Every new cat owner carries some version of the same story. They walked into a shelter. They saw a frightened animal in a small cage. Something clicked. They signed the paperwork, drove home, opened the carrier door, and expected gratitude to come flooding out, that the cat would somehow sense what had just happened, that love offered generously enough would simply be received. That expectation has a name in behavioral science, the savior complex, and it quietly dismantles the bond before it ever gets a real chance to form. Cats process the world through a completely different emotional architecture than humans do. Rescue lands for them as a sequence of rapid environmental disruptions, foreign smells layered on top of each other, unfamiliar sounds, new textures underfoot, a different quality of air in every room. Researcher John Bradshaw spent years studying feline cognition, and his work reveals something worth sitting with. Cats were never shaped by the same domestication process that produced dogs. Dogs co-evolved alongside human social hierarchies across tens of thousands of years. Cats worked out a completely different arrangement with us, one rooted in proximity and mutual tolerance rather than anything resembling submission or devotion. Once you absorb that, the whole game changes because now you have an actual map instead of just good intentions. Think about what your cat physically sees when it looks at you. You are 10 to 20 times its body mass. You move unpredictably. You approach from above. In feline evolutionary biology, overhead movement carries the signature of a predator. Hawks, owls, larger animals descending before striking. That directional threat signal is wired into your cat's nervous system at a level that bypasses your expression, your tone, your intentions entirely. When you lean down and reach toward a new cat's head, you are performing the opening geometry of an attack from its neurological standpoint, and the signal lands the same way whether you are smiling or not. Researchers call this the blind spot vulnerability. The zone directly above and behind a cat's head falls outside its primary visual field. With a panoramic range of roughly 280 degrees, that overhead territory is genuinely the one area the cat cannot easily monitor or defend. Reaching into it fires an automatic threat assessment faster than any conscious response, regardless of relationship history. Here is the painful part most owners never connect. When the cat flinches or backs away, the natural human reaction is to try harder, reach more often, close the distance faster. Each attempt at reassurance compounds the exact verdict the cat was already forming, which is the opposite of what anyone wanted. We will get to what actually works. Hold that thought. Before we move deeper, consider something small. Think back to a moment when your cat flattened its ears for just a fraction of a second, then seemed to recover as though nothing happened. That quick flash of the inner eyelid, the whiskers drawing slightly back. Behaviorist Marilyn Krieger calls these suppression signals, tiny involuntary leakages of a threat response the cat has learned to contain, usually because showing visible fear tends to produce more contact from the human, and the cat has figured that out. Your cat may have been quietly carrying fear around you for much longer than you realized. Simply because you are enormous, and nobody ever taught you how to make yourself feel small. Sit with that for a second. If this is resonating, drop your cat's name and age in the comments right now. Tell us who you are actually here learning this for, before your cat makes any observable decision about you, before it rubs against your leg or retreats under the bed, before it hisses or pushes its head into your hand. It has already been running you through a system built for exactly this kind of threat assessment. A chemical system that predates every domesticated relationship humans have ever formed with an animal. The feline olfactory system carries roughly 67 million scent receptors. Humans have around 6 million. But the receptor count is almost beside the point because the more important question is what cats actually do with that chemical information once they have gathered it. Cats possess a secondary scent processing organ called the vomeronasal organ, also known as Jacobson's organ, positioned at the roof of the mouth just behind the upper incisors. When your cat does that strange frozen pause with its mouth slightly open, appearing to grimace at nothing, the behavior has a name: the Feline response. The cat is actively drawing air molecules into the vomeronasal organ for deep chemical analysis. This organ reads pheromones with extraordinary specificity, biochemical signals encoding identity, reproductive status, current emotional state, and threat level, all in a single chemical sample. When your cat sniffs you, it is doing something considerably more targeted than a general investigation. Your emotional state is encoded directly in your body chemistry, and your cat reads it fluently, often before you have taken a single step toward it. Your stress hormones, your cortisol, the chemical residue of whatever you carried emotionally into the room, whether the calm you are projecting is genuine or constructed. A 2020 study in the journal Applied Animal Behavior Science found that cats exposed to the cortisol-laden scent of stressed owners showed heightened anxiety behaviors for significantly longer periods than cats exposed to neutral or calm-scented objects. Your chemistry arrives in the room before you do, in a sense, and your cat has already begun its assessment. This is the foundation of what researchers have been calling the olfactory processing window. During a new cat's first encounter with you, a window of roughly 2 to 4 seconds opens in which the vomeronasal organ is actively classifying your chemical signature. Inside that window, the cat remains in assessment mode before any behavioral response has committed. This is measurable neural activity that precedes any physical movement, and the 3-second trust rule lives entirely inside that gap. The window is an evolutionary remnant, a gap that natural selection preserved inside the predator-threat response to allow for low-cost information gathering before committing to the metabolic expense of flight. In the wild, unnecessary fleeing burns energy a small animal cannot afford to waste. So evolution built in a brief window of biological reasonable doubt. Is this actually dangerous, or am I about to exhaust myself running from nothing? You can step directly into that pause. The requirement is genuine chemical neutrality, a truly regulated nervous system, because your cat will process the difference between the real thing and a performance of it at a molecular level. Think about the loop that creates. The anxiety you feel about whether your cat trusts you yet is chemically broadcasting a low-level threat signal to the cat. The worry about the bond is physiologically interfering with the bond itself. Only one party in that dynamic has the cognitive capacity to interrupt it consciously. If this is clicking for you, tap the like button right now. This is the evolutionary architecture underlying your entire relationship with this animal. What the 3-second window requires from you is genuine stillness paired with physical smallness, neutral and calm presence at the cat's level. No overhead reach, no sustained direct eye contact either, since a prolonged frontal gaze reads in feline body language as a dominant signal rather than an invitation. Inside that window, the goal is simply to avoid being filed away as a threat. Here is where most owners quietly go wrong in the next phase, and it has less to do with what they do than when they do it. Forced affection ranks among the most common and most subtly damaging mistakes in early feline bonding, and the harm comes from how completely the cat's nervous system misreads the gesture. When you pick up a cat that has not signaled readiness, when you draw it into your lap or hold it still while you stroke it, the cat's body runs a physical capture sequence. The precise physiological script any prey-sized animal follows when held against its will by something 10 times its size. Physical restraint carries a very specific meaning in the biological vocabulary of a small animal. Heart rate surges, cortisol floods the system, adrenaline, full-body muscle tension, all of that survival chemistry activates with full sincerity. And the fact that you are smiling is simply not information the nervous system can access or use in that state. Behaviorist Pam Johnson Bennett documented through extensive clinical work with rescued and shelter cats that animals subjected to repeated forced handling during the early bonding period showed measurably longer avoidance patterns and took considerably more time to initiate voluntary contact than cats given consistent autonomy over physical interaction. The data points in one clear direction. Restraint slows trust, and what it communicates to the cat is size advantage, nothing warmer than that. Now here is the instinct running underneath all of this. Cats belong to a category behavioral ecologists call non-obligate social species. Their origins were as solitary hunters who, under specific resource conditions, formed loose and low-commitment colonies. Social bonding for a cat functions as a genuine choice, an ongoing voluntary calculation about whether proximity to a specific creature returns more benefit than the cost of exposure. When your cat settles near you, it weighed that against every other available option in the room and came out in your favor. That deserves more weight than most people give it. Affiliative consent is the behavioral term for this voluntary approach, and it functions as the only authentic entry point into deep feline bonding. The signals look like this. Your cat initiates movement toward you without any prompt. It sniffs without pulling back immediately. It settles at a comfortable distance in a relaxed posture. These are explicit invitations written in a language most owners were simply never taught to read. When those signals appear, you wait. You physically reduce your presence, sit on the floor, drop your center of gravity, turn your body slightly sideways rather than squaring up to the cat. You slow your breathing and let the cat control every inch of whatever distance eventually closes between you. Before you attempt physical contact, check what is actually happening inside you. If your nervous system is running hot from the day, your cat picks that up before you move. 60 seconds of genuine regulation, dropping your shoulders, slowing the exhale, shifts your actual chemistry. Your cat will distinguish the real version from an imitation. This is the precise moment where most early bonding either builds real momentum or stalls out quietly, and it comes down almost entirely to whether you can release the urgency of needing to be loved right now. The technique itself is almost embarrassingly simple, which is probably why so few people take it seriously at first. Hold out one finger. Not your whole hand, not an open palm. Just one finger, extended at the height of your cat's nose, held completely still. You do not lean in. No sounds. No eye contact. You hold the presence, and you wait. What you are replicating is the feline nose-to-face greeting gesture. When cats with an existing relationship approach each other, they extend their nose toward the other's face first, a low commitment opening that translates roughly as, "I am open to this." A single finger held at nose height mirrors that geometry closely enough that most cats, including highly anxious ones, will eventually move toward it to investigate. The scale, the shape, and especially the stillness of it, pass the initial threat screen in a way that an open hand moving toward them simply never would. When your cat's nose makes contact with your finger, even briefly, something meaningful has just happened. The cat chose contact on its own terms, and that kind of initiated contact opens a neurological file in the cat's memory, with your chemical signature attached as the reference point. You cannot replicate it through any other method. The secure base theory, developed originally by attachment psychologist John Bowlby and extended into animal bonding research by veterinary behaviorist Daniel Mills and his colleagues, tells us that animals who establish a secure base, a person or place reliably associated with safety, explore their environments more freely, recover from stress more quickly, and build deeper and more durable affiliative bonds over time. Your cat is running an ongoing search for a fixed point of safety in an environment that always carries some degree of unpredictability, and every interaction you have is either adding to that file or complicating it. Picture this. It is a Tuesday evening, unremarkable in every way, and you are sitting on the floor with a book. Your cat walks in from the other room, stops a few feet away, and just looks at you for a moment. Then it walks a little closer, sniffs your knee, and without any fanfare, curls up against your leg and closes its eyes. You performed no technique. You just became consistently safe across enough repetitions that the cat's running calculation finally returned a confident answer. The purring that follows carries more information than most people realize. Research by veterinary surgeon Elizabeth von Muggenthaler showed that feline purring occurs at vibrational frequencies between 25 and 50 Hz, a range clinically associated with tissue repair and pain reduction in mammalian biology. The cat's nervous system is actively using your presence as a regulatory resource in that moment, which means you have been reclassified into something closer to medicine in its internal registry. And the step almost everyone skips: retreating before the cat asks you to. When your cat shows the earliest signs of overstimulation, a flick of the tail, a skin ripple, a quick backward rotation of one ear, the loving instinct is to keep going, to push through toward more connection. Resist that. Pulling back before the cat has to disengage teaches it something that no amount of affection alone can communicate. That contact with you has a natural, respectful end point. That your presence comes with a genuine off switch. That willingness to step back, offered consistently, communicates a kind of respect your cat will register faster than you might expect. Trust grows from always returning on the cat's terms, and the cat tracking that pattern across time. There is a moment that eventually comes for every patient cat owner, and no amount of reading quite prepares you for the experience of it. The room is quiet. Nothing prompted it. Your cat walks toward you from across the room, not because you called or because food is involved, just because it decided to. It reaches your side, presses its forehead firmly into you, and holds the contact. That behavior is called bunting. The glands along a cat's forehead and temple produce pheromones associated with familiarity, safety, and social belonging, and bunting is the deliberate transfer of those pheromones onto a person. When your cat does this to you, it is a declaration that you have been added to its internal map of the world as something safe, something known, something worth marking. That is the actual payoff of everything you have been building. The marking requires certainty. The cat simply does not extend before accumulating enough evidence, and that certainty arrived because you understood deeply enough to earn it, because you learned to move in stillness, to speak in chemistry, to offer restraint as a form of respect. Choosing to become genuinely safe rather than just affectionate is a different kind of decision, and it produces a different quality of relationship. The road from adoption day to something that feels like soulmate is built from the accumulation of small decisions. Every time you let the cat lead. Every time you retreated when it needed room. Every time you chose the floor over the overhead reach. These are the chapters of a bond that most people never finish writing because they keep waiting for the cat to make the first move without realizing they are the ones who need to make the environment worth moving toward. The cat was always willing to close the distance. It just needed enough consistent evidence that arriving was safe. If this kind of content is why you are here, subscribe before you go. New videos come out regularly, and every one of them is built on the same foundation. Understanding your cat at a biological level changes the entire relationship, not just the surface of it. Here's your behavioral test for today. Find a quiet moment when your cat is in the same room but not focused on you. Sit down on the floor, make yourself physically small, and hold out one finger at your cat's nose height. Go completely still. No leaning in, no sounds, no eye contact. Just hold the presence and wait. Watch what happens across the next 60 to 90 seconds. Some cats will glance over and then look away as though the whole thing was beneath them. Some will take 2 deliberate steps closer and then freeze, running their assessment. Some will walk straight to your finger and make contact without any hesitation. Every response gives you real information about where you are in the process, a simple marker of where you stand on a map that is still being drawn between the two of you. Write what happened in the comments. Tell me your cat's name, its age, and what it did when you tried the test. Every cat carries its own history, its own olfactory memory, its own set of unresolved assessments from every human it encountered before you walked into its life. You are potentially the resolution to every past disappointment your cat has ever carried forward. That is a genuinely significant thing to be. The window your cat offers you lasts about 3 seconds, a brief biological pause inside the threat response where genuine trust can enter if the right conditions are present. You know what that window is now. You know what showing up to it correctly actually requires. So go still. Let the chemistry speak honestly, and give your cat the space to find its way to you.